Welcome back. It's time again for our community conversation. It's the Raad Life with the one man who seems to be in the center of every conversation here sometime sooner or later. The one man, our raconteur around town. He's trying to talk already here.
I need to talk, yes. What are you cutting me off for?
The raconteur.
Haven't even started. Yeah, where'd you come up with that one? I know what it means, but, do you want to explain that to most people? Because I don't know that a lot of people know what raconteur means.
He's a clever storyteller.
Ah.
He tells about the adventures that he's seen here in Orange County, living the life, the Raad life.
I think Paul just called me a smart butt.
That sounds French, raconteur.
Raconteur.
Well, and so you see the level of culture that we have just added to the show, right? on all levels here. You're going to get culture, you're going to get local culture. We got, Chef Pascal came back. I think, honestly, he came back because he likes that intro music. Don't you like that intro music? He's constantly drumming away at the intro music.
But the famous Chef Pascal didn't bring any food again.
Man.
Okay, so so before we start with our guest, I just want to say thank you, Chef. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks, and instead of trying to do the show from all the way Turkey on a boat, fishing, hanging out drinking with a bunch of friend of mine,
the Raad life,
the Raad life,
right? Chef Pascal said he would love to co-host the show or host the show when I'm gone, and so thank you for doing that. I wanted to mention that. And thank you for a great time last time when you were here.
You did?
Yeah.
Did you understand me?
I understood your accent, yes. So he was worried, and if anybody gives him a hard time while I'm gone, you guys are going to pay for it, right? So he said something about his accent. I said, no, it's okay. We need culture whenever we can get it. And when he showed up in the mid-'80s, right?
Yeah.
There was a cultural wasteland when it came to culinary food in Orange County. That's kind of handled, but we still need a couple of accents here.
Give us a couple of restaurants.
It actually enriches our
And believe me,
experience.
after about 100 times I'm going to sit here,
Yeah.
my accent will be better.
Will be improving?
Yeah.
I hope not. I hope you. Yeah, I think you're perfect. as
Remind
you
us
are.
some of the restaurants Chef Pascal was part of. In the early days of Orange
If
County?
anybody wants the list of the restaurants, they will have to contact us, and then we'll give them the list.
Yeah.
But people did ask last week after we got on the air. It was like, well, what were those restaurants? And he's not being fair because right now he's also going around. Now that he can get around again, he's going around and hitting all these different restaurants, and he's posting about all these different restaurants. So he's building a little bit of a like where you should eat, where you should brunch, where you should.
I'm a food blogger, a food reporter, no critic.
There we go.
There you go.
Well, somebody said, he said earlier that people have referred to him as an old goat. That really means sense.
No, I'm a goat.
Just the goat. The greatest of all time.
Have you met Paul? Yes, he will do this to you while I'm gone
Yeah,
too.
keeping an eye on you.
So one of the things that Chef Pascal did is he said, I have certain people, friends of mine, people that I know that would be interesting for the show, and this is just a perfect example of what happens when you actually expand your network, right? I mean, I can't believe we have never met in person yet, living within like 10, 15 minutes probably of each other, right? So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest. Jared, thank you for being here today.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate you being here. And
Very special man.
yeah, a real thrill, actually, because when Chef Pascal just kind of teased me a little bit.
Yeah.
And
He's good at that.
Yeah, he does. He
Yeah.
does the teasing very well. It must be the French thing. I don't know.
It's a real French thing.
The French teasing. So he was like, I have this friend, Jared Mathis, and the museum, and I go, museum? We're a museum, and Moulton Company. I'm like, okay, I've been in South County since '87. How do I not know about this, right? And like Paul says, I'm kind of a curious person in by nature, and I'm always kind of inquisitive, and I like history, and I like kind of to draw the connection between things and where we were and how we got here, and some of the things that are known and some of the stories that are not so known, right? And so, I'm thrilled that you're here. So would you let people know a little bit about you? I'm not going to ruin the surprise. I want you to basically let people know.
All right. Sounds good. First of all, really thrilled to be here. And anything Pascal wants me to do, I'll do.
I won't ask you to cook for me.
Yeah, that's right. I know my place around you. Jared Mathis, I've been in Orange County living since 2013. So not forever. But I grew up in Northern California on a ranch, a farm and a ranch where my family still is, and that ranch was born from a ranch here in South Orange County as it sold off, and that was Moulton Ranch,
Right.
neighbor to Irvine Ranch. Basically, Irvine to San Juan Capistrano was what Moulton Ranch was, and with the Laguna Canyon as kind of the dividing line between Moulton Ranch and
Irvine
Ranch, and it was the eastern border was roughly what I-5 is now. It was El Camino Real at the time, and it narrowed up and hit the water at what is now called Monarch Bay, and the dividing line between Laguna Beach and Dana Point, which is between Three Arch and Monarch, is the old ranch property line.
Interesting.
And it followed that. And then the ranch cut behind Laguna Beach. Top of the world above Laguna Beach was part of it.
So kind of like Long, really, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a piece of pie, and with widest on the eastern border, and was roughly 22,000 acres at its height. It was first acquired in 1895 by my great-grandfather, Lewis Moulton, who came to Orange County first in 1874 as a 19-year-old on an adventure. And he went to work the day after he got to town for Mr. Irvine on the San Joaquin, Rancho San Joaquin.
Yeah.
And was a sheep herder for 20 years before he put together what was Moulton Ranch.
So then that and just to kind of position it, that was interesting too. How your grandfather ended up getting the ranch, right? It was the timing,
right?
Right.
You're right, absolutely. And we put together a movie about it. It's about 10 minutes. It's on our YouTube channel.
On your YouTube channel. What's the YouTube channel?
It's Moulton Museum, and we opened up Moulton Museum Labor Day of 2022. So we haven't been around a long time, but we put together this movie, kind of the origin story of Moulton Ranch. And the wild part was nobody wanted him to buy the ranch. None of his family wanted him to do it. They thought he was crazy. They said, this is just the beginning of the failures. Don't do it. But Juana Villa ended up with the land grant, which we have in our possession.
That's amazing.
Yeah, signed by Ulysses S. Grant. It's pretty wild. It traveled with the land like the deed. But anyway, he sold it to a guy by the name of Cyrus Rawson, who was actually a Laguna Beach guy.
Okay.
And he was a great guy by all accounts. Just wasn't really good at managing his money and managing debt and that sort of thing. Got over his skis.
It happens.
It's a classic Orange County story, right? It happens all the time.
Right.
So anyway, he got in trouble, and so Lewis, my great-grandfather, was able to buy the ranch from him without, at first, family support. Just made the deal.
Right.
And then had to scramble after that.
Well, but up till that point, he had been a sheep herder, basically.
Yeah, he had a 7-sided portable house that he would take up and down the coast to Long Beach, down to San Diego with sheep, and then he would start to lease ground over time, and then come to own it. And that's kind of the story of how he got the opportunity to purchase Moulton Ranch for $125,000 at the time.
What year was this?
1895. So 22,000 acres.
I mean, it's still a chunk of change for that time.
It was a big chunk of money. And
Was it at that time that California had ordered to divide farmland equally, like 50,000 or something like that?
Not in this particular case. I mean,
Okay.
the biggest action that affected that land previous to our ownership was the Spanish land grant patent that was given to Juana Villa.
And I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. We get Jared a little closer to the mic there. He's coming out of the picture. There we go.
Okay.
All right. So
for people that don't know, I mean, that wasn't an unusual situation, because there was these big land masses that were these original land grants,
Right. Yeah.
right, that basically made up the whole county, and then it went all the way up to L.A. And you and I were talking beforehand about
above, too.
Right, exactly.
Even all the ranches above Santa Barbara too.
Yeah, I mean, it was all basically Spanish land grants.
Yeah.
And we were talking about South County. We were talking about the where San Clemente is now, right? Was that the O'Neill?
Yes.
Right. And how that was also basically interesting. And then, again, as old as time, the story, right, with the people that marry into the land and marry into the holdings and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's good to see kind of the chain of title as it comes along. In fact, people who bought their dirt most recently in Monarch Bay, which was part of Moulton Ranch, that had been under a land lease for a long, long time. Their deeds to their property starts with the King of Spain.
Yeah.
I mean, and it runs all the way down
Right.
to current ownership today. And we had much the same with Moulton Ranch.
So, Jared, I know you guys you have a lot of this information, a lot of this historical data, a lot of the archival materials, maybe some artifacts. I'm just curious, why was there not a museum before? Why is it such a recent thing?
Well, longevity, and I'll explain what I mean. The women in our family lived a long time. And so Louis and Nellie Gail Moulton were my great-grandparents, and they had two daughters, Charlotte and Louise. And Charlotte was quintessential grandmother, singing in the kitchen, cooking for all the roundups, and was very much a soft touch. And on the other side of that coin was her sister Louise, who was in the corral all the time, was the best roper. Yeah. She would literally ride two horses to school, one foot on one on the other, standing up. She was tough lady, and she lived till she was 99.
Yeah.
So as Nellie Gail, so Louis passed in 1938. Okay. Nellie Gail passed in 1972 in her mid-90s.
Okay.
Charlotte also made it into her 90s. Louise made it to 99, which was 2014.
Wow.
Now, Louise was also the last one to leave Moulton Ranch. Now, Moulton Ranch was made up of what became Laguna Hills, Laguna Woods, Aliso Viejo, Laguna Niguel.
Sure.
She had the Aliso Viejo area. And so as everyone else, as the rest of the ranch sold off over time, she ended up keeping all the really cool stuff. And then it all went with her to a ranch that she purchased up in Lompoc, north of Santa Barbara, which was roughly 14,000 acres, by the way, which we've conserved. We have a conservation easement on it, can never be developed. And anyway, she loved the history, and she kept everything. Nellie Gail kept everything. Charlotte kept everything. And Nellie Gail would travel the world many times throughout her life. Mm-hmm. And she had these steamer trunks with the cruise ship stickers on it and everything. As Louise was getting close to her death, we ended up going to her place and finding all these things. She was pretty private and wasn't real fond of company. She had kind of created a museum of her own, but it was... things
those were meaningful things for her,
right?
Yeah.
And they kept it because it was history for Orange County. But literally in horse tack rooms, in barns, in shops, in the house, behind paintings, priceless paintings, behind vacuums, in closets, all these things that we started to discover as we were kind of surrounding her towards the end of her life. Mm-hmm. And it was then that we realized that we had so much. Mm-hmm. That we had to do something. And the first step was to bring it all back to Orange County, bring it back to where it came from, because she loved Orange County. And I think they all never wanted to leave, but they wanted to keep ranching, and they couldn't do that.
Right.
And they weren't developers. They didn't want to be developers. They wanted to be in the lifestyle that they enjoyed, right? Mm-hmm. And so as all these other ranches were born, as Moulton Ranch sold off, then we ended up with Louise in Santa Barbara, or north of Santa Barbara. And so bringing it back home to Orange County was important, because all the magazine stacks in her house, it was Balboa Bay Club magazine. It was Orange County Register. I don't think your heart ever left. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first step. And then once we started uncovering everything and cracking open all those steamer trunks and seeing the razor thin stacks of paper, telegrams, pictures, film, everything. So the last 8-9 years we've had university level archivists, putting the collection together, archiving
just to get
it
your
all.
hands around what
Just
you've
to
got,
get it,
actually,
right? And we're just scratching the surface.
Seriously, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, and we've done a pretty good job of telling the origin story now, but it's really just the first step.
Are you going to expand the museum?
Yeah, probably over time. We're not in any hurry. We have the museum actually on property that we've owned since 1895 in Laguna Hills.
Okay, where is it in Laguna Hills?
Off of La Paz and Cabot.
Okay.
There's a shopping center there
Yeah.
that is still family owned, and so we took over space inside that center. And so we have about 5,000 square feet at our disposal between storage and archival and exhibition space. There's possibility that we could do a number of different things. I mean, it's really an interesting time that we're in right now, right? So talking about old pieces that were part of the ranch. The Ziggurat building, the Chet Holyfield Federal
Yeah.
building, is going up for sale here pretty soon in June. They've removed the historical covenants. That's 92 something acres that my great aunt Louise actually made the deal with North American Rockwell that actually built the building.
That's Aliso Creek and
It's Alicia and Aliso Creek. Yep.
Yeah, that corner. Yep.
Yeah, and of course North American Rockwell never occupied that because the industry turned, and so then the federal government came and took the building. Anyway, that's for sale, and so that 92 acres is open and going to be pitched to be developed and figured out, and then at the same time, Laguna Hills, right off of I-5, the Laguna Hills Mall, that has all been basically torn down.
Yeah.
That's 60 some odd acres and now of basically raw land that now needs to be re-envisioned
Repurposed, yeah.
because the plan that was put together by the developer that owns it now included a bunch of office space that's never going to be built, right? I mean, it's just not going to be built in this economy. So is
It's
there
amazing how quick things change.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's not even
Well, that's-
5 years, and the whole dynamic changed on that one.
The world changed, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of development, right?
yeah.
It's timing.
Yeah.
So those are two pretty big swaths of land that used to be part of the old ranch. Can we find, a quarter acre to put a museum on one of those pieces? With the
Well-
right partnership, we could potentially. We have the old blueprints of the headquarters of the ranch from 1908 that we could rebuild tomorrow if we had the right opportunity.
Right.
You know
So
what,
it's
what
not
they- yeah.
it's not in the immediate plans, but who knows?
What they do in Europe in this kind of situation, they like to create interactive thing, almost like a mini farm. And because you have a lot of kids,
Right.
we have a lot of group come visit, they want to see how it looked like before.
Right.
And we can bring a couple sheep or maybe something, and then so people have a vision how it was before, I think.
Your lips to God's ears. I'm all in.
So let me ask you a question on that, because it raises the conversation. I mean, even with some of your family members, would like they didn't really want to leave Orange County, but Orange County was changing in its
Right.
nature, and they basically went to a ranch up north because there's
And
more
what,
open.
somebody
more open
wanted to
space.
tweet, what time frame was this? When did they sell the ranch and start
So
developing
the
it?
ranch started to sell off. I think the earliest was Laguna Niguel Corporation took over a piece of Laguna Niguel in 1959. They didn't develop it right away, but then the community of Monarch Bay was created in 1960, and then everything kind of followed that, with the last pieces being sold in 1973-4.
Jared, can you just quickly talk about, because I'm very, very proud of it, that a French Basque man kind of saved the ranch?
Yeah, completely. So Jean-Pierre Daguerre, it took him probably 6 months to get to the U.S., whereas Lewis, coming from Boston, probably took him about 6 weeks on a steamer ship across the Isthmus of Panama.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But so a big journey for Jean-Pierre Daguerre. And he first started helping Lewis as a sheep herder.
Okay.
On the ranch. So right after he bought the ranch in 1895, we were in the worst drought since the one we were just in, basically 125 years apart from one another. There was no feed for sheep. So they had to literally take 12,000 sheep, and this is what Jean-Pierre Daguerre did. Took those bands of sheep from
To
Laguna,
where you can feed them.
which was Laguna Hills. They had to take them all the way to Mammoth, to Bishop, through the Mojave Desert, right? I can't even imagine. Everybody hates that drive to go skiing, which takes 5 or 6 hours.
But with the sheep.
Imagine doing it on a horse with 12,000 sheep.
That
trying
you're
to
going to
protect
lose
them.
some of along
Yeah.
the way
Of
for sure.
course.
Yeah.
Cyrus Rawson was waiting for Jean-Pierre Daguerre in Bishop as he was bringing the sheep, because now he was helping out Lewis, and he said, "There's no use in whimpering because these are horrible things, but we have to man up, essentially." And we have all the letters back and forth of this journey. Really, truly amazing. But because he was such a good sheep herder, and also because he also had a little bit of resources too, Daguerreau type photography, that was part of his family line as well. He came in to help Lewis get through this drought as a 1/3 partner of interest in the ranch.
Now, when they first met, it was just a matter of happenstance?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But they that headquarters I mentioned at where the Laguna Hills Mall is now, their houses were literally right next to one another. The families, he had daughters, 2 daughters and 1 son, and Louis and Niguel had 2 daughters. And he was a great man, great family, and they had a wonderful relationship. And then, unfortunately, one day at Cabot in Crown Valley, where that Costco is, he literally bought the farm because he rolled a buggy. Jean-Pierre had an accident and died.
Wow.
Down that hill.
Yeah, and his son, not long after, died of, I think, Spanish flu. Something took him down. So then Louis passed away in 1938. So there was a moment in time where there was Mrs. DeGuerre and Nellie Gail, both with 2 daughters, and that's it.
And no men.
Nobody. Yeah. And so we have a feature at the museum called "Women on the Ranch," all talking about the empowerment of women at that time and what they had to do to be able to keep everything going. And it was kind of an empire at the time. I mean, you think of cattle and sheep, but truly it was a farming operation.
Right.
It was whether it was lima beans or wheat or barley, grains going to warehouses similar to the one at Sand Canyon right now, where that La Quinta it's kind of been turned into. It's that big warehouse.
Yeah.
And there was a blacksmith shop that's now a hamburger place. My dad would take grain to that warehouse all the time.
Yeah, and I mean that building sat. And I remember that building sat there empty for many, many moons before they actually even repurposed it. And I mentioned to you, I was on the board of the Historical Society in San Clemente for 13 years. So for me, there's a soft spot in my heart when you actually repurpose stuff like that, because we live in an environment, especially in California, but societally where it's just like tear down, put in new, tear down, put in new. But when you do that without at least some of your roots being represented, you lose a little bit of a DNA in the community. And so I agree with Pascal, especially with the understandable additional need for housing, changing needs, like you were saying with offices, who's going to build office buildings anymore? I mean, I talked to people at the Essex Read their day, and they were basically working on conversions of office spaces to residential units, right? Interestingly, using the ADU guidelines to do that, right? So there's always change. There's always change. There's always purpose change, use of land change, whatever. But it's also important to hold on to some of this stuff.
You don't want to lose the past.
Well, you don't know because it's like if you don't have roots, then where do the branches go?
Well, that's a great point. And Aliso Viejo did a wonderful job. I'll give the city credit, and their council at the time had vision. There at what is called Aliso Viejo Ranch were the last standing Moulton Ranch buildings, the only ones remaining. And the bunkhouse was there, and that was where everybody from all the different cultures came in. I mean, no matter who it was, they were all there together. And those buildings got preserved. They didn't get torn down. They got historically preserved and adaptively reused. So now the community can enjoy it all there, and exactly to what your point and Pascal's point is let them see what it used to look like. And we got nothing out of that relationship other than providing content and context.
But there's a legacy, Jared. I mean, the legacy, the sense of pride in place. I remember, and this is kind of like an inside joke for us down in San Clemente. It was like when they were doing Talega. Okay, Talega is inland of the 5, and I won't even go into the right zip codes and right zip. People are funny in communities, but there was the old historical part that was sort of along the coast, and this was a massive development area now inland, right? Where ironically they would castrate the bulls. And I will spare people where the name comes from, but go dig it up. You'll find out. I'm not going to share this on there. But the thing about it that was interesting is they used the historical archival material that we had in San Clemente to sell the new community.
100%.
Right? And then ironically, once it got established, then they abandoned that branding and went to their own branding. So I never understood when you have gold like that, why you don't actually not only use it but enhance it and build on it, because again, it's like what you're saying. You were raised up north. There's a connection to the land. The land connection is this way. The Basque Frenchman who came and helped. Like, these are all very important, because if you know that, then you feel very solid in your anchoring, a sense of pride of place, right?
Yeah.
And we lose that very easily. It's sort of important not to, if we can.
When I discover your museum and a bit of the history, I don't know enough yet, but I'm learning more and more. It really makes me feel better being in California. Everybody says there's no past, there's no history in California.
Right.
It's all new. So it's a new world. No, it's not. So thank you for doing this, because really find back the roots.
You know, it gives us also, it just kind of dawned on me for a minute. We need things that give us commonality, connection.
Well, that was part of the math, right? I mean, we live in a divided world. We all know this.
Sadly,
yeah. And to be able to share the dirt that used to be a part of, Moulton Ranch is a pretty big swath of South Orange County, and then to get people to think about what was there before provides that commonality and brings us all together. That when people come into Moulton Museum, the one thing I guarantee you will not leave depressed, right? There's not going to be, you're not going to feel divided or anything like that. Our mission is to bring people together to appreciate a couple of different things. One, great history, right? And storytelling about what was here before. And based on Niguel's passion and influence, we feature art. And so we put art and history together, and we bring culture and agriculture together. And it really, it like a great recipe of Pascal's, it comes together in something that I think is very easy to consume, that is educational and fun and inspiring. I mean, what we want to do is have people leave Moulton Museum with a passion of what is possible. The pioneer spirit really is the larger message beyond, whatever our family did.
Which I'll just say a couple of things to that one. So, and it's not contrived.
No,
it's authentic. Yeah. Okay, which is rarer than rare these days, right? In a world where everything gets branded and boxed and put a label on, this is authentic lineage, right? And you're graciously sharing it with everybody. So even if you're recent to the area, you now have a sense of connection to the area because of this. And what a gift that you just found out about relatively recently, right?
For sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know how much audience you have, but can we add the audience? If anybody has something that can share, that we can show from the past, they should contact you and bring it over. Right. I think people have things at home they have from generation to generation. They have it there, but they don't share it.
Right.
So let's put it back together.
And very extremely good point, because especially now, as that part of the county is no longer new, there's a lot of people, like my parents basically passed away a couple of years ago. We built in San Clemente in 2000. I am now in the house that they basically built, right? And I'm surrounded by all the stuff. And it's like, sometimes you don't think that you're going into somebody's house, your parents' house, you're clearing out some stuff, and you don't think necessarily that some of the stuff has value.
So
but it might actually have value, and
100%.
Now you have places like the Moulton Museum that you can contact for doing that. So please do, share that stuff.
One of the gifts, when you give of yourself, you always get back more, period. You guys have done it a million times, and I've been lucky enough to do it myself. But the reward for me, whether it's children or adults alike, when they come in and we start telling the stories and you see the light bulbs going off, right?
Yeah.
And it's really powerful. And they love the 1874 Into the West origin story. They do. But I really see them light up when we start talking about the things that they remember. So to your point, there's a lot of folks living in Orange County, South Orange County, that remember when Aliso Parkway didn't go all the way through to, when there were dirt roads and when they bought their house in the 70s or 60s or something, and they probably have pictures in shoe boxes or albums somewhere in their house. We want to be a magnet for all of that, because the next big exhibition that we will have in the museum after 1874 is going to be that transition from the ranching period to what it is today. things that people can remember now. And that's also why we do oral histories, because
I was going to
it's
say
so
oral
important.
histories all the time.
Right.
So easy to do these days. Point a camera, point your phone, catch those moments, because once they're gone,
Yeah, they're gone.
They're gone.
They're gone forever. And thankfully, our parents' generation, we got them all in front of a video camera. And then, lo and behold, not long after that, they all went away. And
I mean, Pascal is doing it in his own way with the culinary.
Yeah.
Again, with like, what are some of the meals that you remember from your childhood that your mom cooked, and make sure you get those,
Sure.
and
Right.
or at least even better, go into the kitchen and have her show you how to cook them.
It's legacy.
Yes.
And
It's
then,
legacy.
so I will urge teachers from middle school, high school, or colleges, go on the field trip now.
right.
Because share that with your young people so they know, and then they will pass this on. Say, "Oh, I didn't know that," and then we'll come back home, talk to their parents.
Jared, the
Right.
other thing that's interesting, and I will give a nod to, I think was it Tim Smith that you were on the
Yeah.
show with, right? Great show, by the way, Tim. Awesome. I reached out to him and added him on LinkedIn today. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you for the research in advance of the show. But one of the things that you guys talked about, or he mentioned in passing, which I think is also part of the legacy. See, it's funny. We live in a state where, in Orange County, where it's like everything's new, everything's tear down and rebuild, or land development, and it's such a huge economic engine, real estate development, right? So
Right.
it's unavoidable, and that's not going to change. It's just maybe the purpose, like with the El Toro Mall, the purpose may change. We will adjust to what our needs are today, and we'll do it in an innovative manner, but it's still that.
Right.
So what was interesting is, and I think this brings it home, is that part of the legacy is that, and we're calling it cowboy spirit, pioneer spirit, whatever, is also the entrepreneur spirit.
Yes.
And now you have a layer added onto that, which is basically women entrepreneur spirits, very early on
Amazing.
in this
Right.
area, right? So
Right.
that is part of the legacy too.
I didn't
And-
want to be under their arm because I'm sure it was a tough time for the men.
I mean, they were strong. They were
Well,
tough.
you'd have to be.
And they knew what they liked, and they went after it. And they built things. They built institutions. I mean, real institutions. Women gathering together to build the Laguna Art Museum.
Absolutely.
And Laguna College of Art and Design, and Laguna Moulton Playhouse, and all
Which
of those
I didn't.
things.
I mean, I know about the Laguna College of Art and Design, and it's an amazing. I mean, it's world renowned, right? And I had no clue until you told me that who founded it.
Yeah. Nellie Gail
Yeah.
helped found Laguna College of Art and Design. She was big into education. She was a teacher and a principal in her own right, although she could never afford to go to college. On her 90th birthday, the LA Times did an interview with her, and she put a bunch of people through school and just emphasized how important it was to get an education. And she wanted to provide that for those that couldn't do it
And can
before.
we point out that Nellie Gail Ranch, which I've driven by a million times, this upscale neighborhood,
Right.
was named after her.
That's right, and Nellie Gail Moulton is Nellie Gail, and the reason that it was named after her is because she donated 250 acres of what that community is to what was Chapman College at the time, and then they held on to it and sold it to be developed later, and they named it after her because of that. I think it's still a top 5 gift to Chapman in the history of the school. I think it helped make it
Interesting.
Chapman University instead of Chapman
Why
College.
the change from cattle ranch to a multi-million-dollar villas? No?
Right.
Well,
naturally.
and for people who don't know, because some of these areas in Orange County, whether it's North County or South County, sometimes you almost have to trip on them. It's almost like Pascal's little, when he shares about little restaurants here and there, like you shared about the Swiss restaurant in was it Balboa? Balboa, yeah. Like there are places that have that legacy, that history.
That depth.
But sometimes it's hard to find them unless you trip over them, right?
Right.
So if you come off the freeway at Green,
For the museum?
no, for
Oh.
Nellie Gail, what's that street?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
it-
I mean, you can get off on La Paz, Oso,
what's the
Valley.
the 73
Valley.
exit is what?
73 in Greenfield.
Greenfield. So if you
right
exit
there.
on Greenfield at 73, it's like boom, right
there.
to the left.
Yep.
If you're heading south. And so, yeah, there are areas that are really special little nooks.
Yeah, and you come across these things, and I'm hopeful that Moulton Museum is one of those special gems. and sometimes you can put them together. And like not long ago when we had Pascal come to the museum, and he actually cooked there, and it was wonderful to bring his history and his expertise and mastery in the kitchen to bear at the museum for a wonderful little event. And that's when you know you've hit a home run.
Well, I was very excited to find that history, because for me, coming from Europe, I was come back here, and then I was looking for the history of cowboy and Indians, you know. But you actually.
Well, you found the history of
I
cowboys.
Cowboys. But you really give me a lesson of what the past of this area. It's fantastic. You're a pioneer. Your family were
Thank you.
pioneers.
Well,
Yeah.
our good friend Tim Clark, who would be upset if we didn't mention him,
Yes.
who's an amazing, world-renowned artist, brought us together. And
Yes.
Tell
we
the
were
story
there
of
for
the
him.
eucalyptus. That was the one you told before I handed out. We all think of eucalyptus as being, it's every picture of Orange County. The streets still aligned with it. They used them as windbreaks and along the railroads and stuff here.
Right. Yeah, no, in all this history, you come across some things that are just kind of interesting, and in all the plein air painting that Nellie Gail has, and a bunch of it has eucalyptus trees. I did a little research, and it was fun to find out that none of these eucalyptus trees are part of California in nature. They were brought.
It's an invasive species.
Yeah, the seeds were brought by Australian missionaries in 1860s, and they started to be grown as actually a cash crop. Actually, where the museum stands, right next to the freeway, that was an eucalyptus orchard, and there were eucalyptus orchards all over the place. In fact, as much as 50,000 acres of eucalyptus was being grown in Orange County, because there was fear of a hardwood shortage, and this was the solution. It was to grow eucalyptus until they actually grew them and then tried to use them.
Not a good wood.
They realized that they warped and cracked, and they were worthless.
It's good wood fire.
Right. And so they were kept as windbreaks, but the cash crop of eucalyptus died a death.
I mean, I just
around 1915 or so.
Ironically, I just planted three eucalyptus plants in the garden, but because in doing hotels and stuff like that, I've been involved in the spa industry from the design perspective probably since '94. So for me, it's the oil in the eucalyptus that I'm actually basically trying to grab and basically just use it in the shower and for steam and stuff like that. But the minute you said hardwoods, I'm like, no, that's like one of the worst possible things to try to build
it's funny, and it's funny too. Even more iconic, palm trees. Only one species of palm tree is native to California. All the rest are from other places that were not native to the area at all.
So in your mind, Jared, how do you see this history, actually sort of rippling as we go forward? Not only as a reference point, how does this become ingrained in how we maybe look at things differently?
Well, I think that learning about history gives you a basis for decision making going forward, right?
Okay.
And I think that it provides a map. And for us, one of the things that we discovered in the letters back and forth from Lewis to his family back east was basically, hey, don't panic. It was those that blow loud horns in times of panic usually come to grief, and so I think those lessons are important to take from people who've experienced maybe not exactly the same thing, but many of the same themes. So being able to tell those stories that have those lessons, I think, are really important. I think when it comes to land, and when there's opportunity for rebirth, whether you're talking about the Ziggurat or the Laguna Hills Mall area, I think it's important to tie back to those things that came before.
So what you're, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's not just repurposing. It's actually repurposing appropriately,
right?
Like sensitively, like maybe even reflecting something from the past, right? It's not just
continuity, Yeah.
piece
Right.
of paper, right?
Right, I
There's
think
value
so.
in actually maybe taking a more sophisticated approach to that.
I think so too. Yes, and Nellie Gail lived that. I mean, she would do many things with different women's groups. They would go hike Mount Rainier to get in tune with the nature. They would go to Yosemite and convene with Native American tribes and really immerse themselves in the culture to understand what came before them,
Right.
and where to go. And so I think that those things are resonate today, and because we weren't the first ones here, and so there's a continuity, like Pascal talks about, that needs to be maintained and cared for. Because one of the things that we could have easily done is we could have packed all this history up in a box, put it in a storage unit, and said, you know what, our kids will figure it out. Well, I love my kids. I've got 3 daughters, 10, 11, and 13. They wouldn't have figured it out because there would have been yet another generation gone that couldn't tell firsthand stories about what this place used to be. And so you got to take responsibility to be able to do it and own it and do your part to be able to, make everything better.
But
And
it- but-
change the vision. For us, the Far West was a gold rush.
Right.
But that was gold. It was from the dirt. It was a real thing.
Well, but you, in order to do what you just said, Jared, is you need to have sort of a soulful connection to understanding the value of doing that, because that takes time, it takes resources, it takes a conscious decision to go down that path where something else may be an easier way to go about it. Right. And I'll tell you, I mean, part of the beauty of places like South County is that there is still a balance. There's a stewardship of the land as well as an embracement of entrepreneurial spirit of development. Right. So that balance is not necessarily just it's nice to have. Sometimes it's actually forgotten how important that is.
Right.
Not only in terms of appreciation of value of property, which of course it has a direct connection to, right? I mean, if you don't just bump everything up together like Belmont Shores, and you have a little breathing space, all of a sudden the value's a little bit higher,
Right.
in an increasingly congested world.
Right.
So there is real bottom line value, but there's also intrinsic value, and that you're passing on to your kids. I mean, you got another group of powerful, empowered women coming up, is what I'm hearing.
I sure hope so.
Really?
But even just the little things. We talked about the ziggurat before.
Yeah.
That huge building and that massive parking lot. If you just surveyed anyone in South Orange County who learned to drive in that parking lot, everybody would raise their hand because they did. And so now that's going to all go away. And so something even as simple as that is important to know and understand and embrace. And I think it can bring us all together.
And that's a massive building, right? So
Right.
I mean, I would be hard pressed to find somebody who's going to repurpose that whole
Oh,
real
it's
estate.
gonna go down.
It's going to go down.
Yeah.
But so for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, you owe it to yourself to actually go do this and look at this building before it's basically demolished, because it's interesting when you look at it and you envision that the area around it is not as built out and populated as it is today. That building still existed in that space. I remember
Right.
the first time I saw that thing.
Right.
It was like, did I turn a corner in the Amazon forest
Are we in
and found a
Orange County?
ziggurat temple from some Aztec thing?
Oh
It
yeah,
was-
it's so brutalist, and the architect
Brutalist is
was
exactly right.
William Pereira, who was a UCI.
Yeah.
He designed all of UCI.
Yep.
That space age building by LAX.
Yes.
That was his Transamerica building in San Francisco, and he was a friend of the family. Laguna Playhouse. He did that for Nellie Gail, and so it's sad that thing will go down, but there's no other way to do
there's
it.
no way to
Take pictures.
Yeah, take
Yeah,
pictures.
go see it.
Yeah.
At least
But
have
the
a reference point.
the beautiful thing, if you want to see it in its original natural state, we have pictures in the museum of it just surrounded by nothing but open space and cattle. And it used to be white. They used to call it the white whale. And my dad would like, what? How did this happen? Because Aunt Louise was very private. She did the deal, and nobody really knew the details of it. But all of a sudden, even a big building like that just kind of popped up. And that was early 70s.
Yeah, it reminded me of when I watched like Stargate or
Yes.
something like that. It's like this big alien spaceship just.
It was in a couple movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
I
that
can't wait
reason.
to know what's going to happen if you're going to be part of it, of the new development there. And I would love you to share that
Well,
with
we've
us.
been talking to a few people. So we'll see.
What is the museum's, as we wrap up, the museum's address, phone number, website, all that stuff?
Address is 25256 Cabot Road. It's off of the major intersection of Cabot and La Paz in Laguna Hills. And 1-800-8-MUSEUM. Also, MoultonMuseum.org is the best and most traditional way to get a hold of us.
Thank you for coming.
It's really,
Amazing
really
tale.
great.
Thank you for sharing your legacy. Fantastic.
Take
Thank
us
you.
out.
Thank you.
Again, listen, look beyond your noses, right? I mean, look, get out of the car, walk a little bit. There's a lot of really gold in those hills, and not every. I mean, news fine, news great, but man, if you don't know where your roots are planted, whether they're your original, genuine roots, right? Or they're roots that are basically you're a transplant into an area. I mean, I've spent more time in South County probably than I've ever lived anywhere else, and I've lived on a couple of continents. And so there's a pride of place. The most important thing, if you don't get anything else out of this episode, I think, is just remember, these things give us continuity. They give us commonality. It actually connects us versus divides us. And that is, I cannot tell you how important that is right now. So important. Find things that actually you have in common with your neighbor. Freaking get out of the car and talk to your neighbor, right?
How about that?
Right?
Yeah.
And here it is. I mean, this is history that goes to the 1800s, right? And this is in your own backyard. So find out about it.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.